What if the worst day of your life turned out to be the beginning of something extraordinary? Sarah, a dedicated nurse, lost her job for saving a life. But just hours later, something unbelievable happened. 10 luxury cars pulled up outside her tiny apartment, and the man she saved had an offer that would change her life forever. Was this fate, luck, or proof that doing the right thing always pays off? Stick around, because this story will leave you speechless. Sarah never imagined that losing her job would lead to the most extraordinary and life-changing moment of her career. What started as an ordinary shift would soon spiral into a test of courage, compassion, and destiny, one that would not only define her future, but also reshape the very fabric of patient care. When she woke up that morning, she prepared for her shift with the same passion and dedication she always had, meticulously laying out her scrubs, reviewing her patient notes, and mentally preparing herself for the relentless pace of the emergency room. As she drove to the hospital, her mind was filled with thoughts about the patient she would care for and the lives she might touch that day, completely oblivious to the reality that her own life was about to dramatically shift course. Stepping through the familiar doors of the hospital, Sarah felt a reassuring sense of purpose, unaware that the next few hours would forever alter her understanding of courage, compassion, and destiny. Suddenly, the calm of the emergency room shattered as the heavy doors burst open, crashing loudly against the walls. A whirlwind of activity surged into the room, filling it with a sense of urgency and panic. Paramedics rushed in, pushing a stretcher carrying a critically wounded man whose condition seemed grave at first glance. Gunshot wounds, multiple injuries. He needs immediate attention, one of the paramedics shouted desperately, his voice filled with intensity and fear. Sarah's heart raced as adrenaline surged through her veins. Instinctively, she moved forward, prepared to lend her expert hands to save the man who was clearly teetering on the brink of life and death. Just as she reached for medical supplies, the hospital administrator stepped forward, his voice slicing sharply through the tension-filled room. No police clearance, no treatment. That's the policy. His tone was cold, emotionless, the authority behind his words unquestionable, plunging the room into stunned silence. Stunned and feeling utterly alone, Sarah glanced desperately around the room. Her colleagues stood paralyzed, their eyes wide with fear, hesitant to challenge the rigid rules set by hospital management. Each second felt like an eternity as Sarah's internal struggle intensified, a war raging between her duty to adhere to strict hospital protocol and her innate human instinct to save a life at any cost. Memories flooded her mind, the oath she had solemnly taken, the countless faces of patients she'd promised to care for, and the undeniable call of her conscience urging her toward compassion. When her gaze returned to the man on the stretcher, she saw his life slowly slipping away, each labored breath weaker than the last. In that instant, clarity broke through the chaos. Protocol became meaningless, overshadowed by the undeniable need to act. Her heart surged with determination, overpowering all doubt, and without further hesitation, Sarah knew precisely what she had to do. Ignoring the strict protocol that bound her colleagues in hesitation, Sarah quickly gathered essential medical supplies, her hands moving with practiced confidence despite the tremor of adrenaline. Around her, the tension in the room thickened. Some nurses gasped softly, exchanging nervous glances, while others instinctively took a step back, afraid of the repercussions. A junior doctor hesitated before whispering, "Sarah, are you sure about this?" But she ignored the doubt in his voice. One nurse clutched the edge of the counter, as if debating whether to intervene, while another subtly shook her head, as if warning Sarah of the consequences. The administrator's cold stare burned into her back, yet she refused to look up. She focused only on the man before her. Saving him was all that mattered. With every second feeling like an eternity, she began working methodically yet swiftly to stabilize the critically wounded stranger. The room fell eerily silent, all eyes fixed on her determined actions. Her movements were precise, each step deliberate, each decision critical. As she expertly controlled the bleeding, administered necessary medications, and closely monitored his fragile vital signs, a tangible tension hung in the air. Gradually, the frantic beeping of the monitors slowed and steadied, signaling that the man was finally out of immediate danger. Sarah felt an immense sense of relief and satisfaction wash over her, knowing she had acted rightly despite the consequences she anticipated. However, her momentary triumph was swiftly overshadowed by a chilling sound, the slow, deliberate applause of the hospital administrator. His expression was cold, void of appreciation. "Outstanding work, Sarah," he stated icily, a faint smirk betraying no warmth or empathy. "Unfortunately, your compassion has cost you your job. You no longer work here." Sarah left the hospital in silence, her heart burdened with the weight of what had just happened. The same door she had walked through countless times as a dedicated nurse now felt foreign and unwelcoming. She had given everything to her profession, and in return, she was cast aside for choosing to do what was right. With no clear destination in mind, she wandered the city streets, her mind clouded with doubt, uncertainty, and a lingering sense of injustice. She drifted past busy intersections and bustling cafes, past honking cars and street vendors calling out to passers-by. Yet, the world around her felt distant, muted by the storm of thoughts in her mind. Where'd she go from here? Who would hire someone who had openly defied hospital regulations? The questions came in waves, relentless and unforgiving. Just as she was about to sit on a bench in a small city park, fate intervened in a way she never could have predicted. A loud gasp cut through the background noise, followed by the unmistakable thud of a body hitting the ground. Instinct took over before she had time to think. Sarah rushed toward the commotion, weaving through a gathering crowd to find an elderly man collapsed on the pavement, his skin pale and his breathing dangerously shallow. Bystanders stood frozen, their faces a mixture of fear and uncertainty. "Someone call an ambulance," Sarah commanded, kneeling beside the man as she checked for a pulse. Nothing. Her training kicked in instantly. Without hesitation, she laced her fingers together, placed them on the center of his chest, and began CPR. 1, 2, 3, 4. She counted under her breath, compressing his chest with firm, steady pressure. The minutes felt endless as she worked tirelessly, her own breath hitching with every second that passed. The crowd watched in silent awe, some whispering prayers, others filming on their phones. A woman sobbed nearby, gripping her hands together as she pleaded for a miracle. "Come on, stay with me," Sarah urged, sweat forming at her brow as she continued chest compressions. For a moment, the world stood still. The murmurs of the crowd faded into silence, the only sound the wind rustling through the trees. Sarah's hands trembled as she prepared for another round of rescue breaths, fear creeping into her mind. Had she done enough? Then, just as she leaned in, a faint twitch of movement in the man's fingers made her freeze. A second later, a sharp gasp tore through the quiet, his chest heaving as life flickered back into him. The tension shattered, replaced by a wave of relieved exclamations from the bystanders. A woman sobbed, clutching her heart, while someone whispered, "She did it, she actually saved him." Sarah let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, exhaustion crashing over her like a tidal wave. But in that moment, none of it mattered. He was alive. A collective exhale swept through the onlookers, followed by relieved applause and murmurs of astonishment. Sarah sat back, catching her own breath, exhaustion washing over her. Through the dispersing crowd, a tall man in a sharp, tailored suit stepped forward. His expression was unreadable at first, serious and searching. But as he knelt beside Sarah and the elderly man, gratitude softened his features. "You just saved my father's life," he said, his voice firm yet filled with awe. Sarah looked up at him, still trying to steady her breath. "Please," the man continued, reaching into his pocket. "May I have your contact information?" Exhausted but hopeful, Sarah handed over her nursing ID, completely unaware that this single moment would serve as the catalyst for a profound and life-altering change. She had spent years dedicating herself to the well-being of others, yet it was only now, after being cast aside by her former employer, that fate had chosen to reward her selflessness in an unexpected way. That evening, Sarah sat alone in her small, dimly lit apartment, her mind replaying the day's events like an old film reel. She stared at the walls, their faded paint peeling in places, and traced the outline of her modest furniture with tired eyes. The weight of uncertainty pressed down on her. What would she do next? Could she ever return to nursing? Was there a place for someone who had chosen compassion over protocol? Her thoughts were interrupted by an unfamiliar sound, one that did not belong in her quiet neighborhood. A deep, steady hum of powerful engines resonated through the walls, growing louder by the second. Curious, Sarah pushed herself off the couch and cautiously walked toward the window. What she saw made her breath hitch. 10 sleek, luxury cars, their polished exteriors gleaming under the dim streetlights, lined up directly outside her building. The sight was surreal, almost cinematic. Neighbors peeked from behind their curtains, whispering among themselves, their curiosity mirroring her own. Then, a firm, deliberate knock echoed through her small apartment. Sarah's heart pounded as she hesitated, gripping the doorknob with clammy fingers. Should she open it? Should she call someone? But before fear could take root, she took a deep breath and twisted the handle. Standing before her was Jacob Matthews, the very man whose father she had saved just hours ago. He looked even more imposing now, his tailored suit immaculate, his posture exuding confidence and quiet authority. Yet, his expression was not one of intimidation, but warmth and gratitude. "Sarah, we need to talk," he said, his voice smooth but firm. Still processing the surreal turn of events, Sarah stepped aside, allowing him to enter her humble apartment. He moved with ease, his sharp gaze briefly scanning the room before settling on her. Behind him, a personal assistant stepped forward, holding a thick, elegant envelope. Jacob took it, then extended it towards Sarah. "This is for you," he said simply. Sarah hesitated before taking the envelope, her fingers trembling slightly. In a country where medical bills could bankrupt families and job loss often led to financial ruin, the sheer amount written on the check felt overwhelming. $500,000, it was more than just money. It was security, a chance to rebuild, and a recognition of the sacrifices she had made. For someone who had dedicated her life to helping others, receiving such a life-changing gesture left her speechless. She slowly peeled it open, her breath catching as her eyes landed on the crisp document inside. A check. Her mind struggled to process the number staring back at her, $500,000. Her pulse quickened. She reread it once, twice, unable to believe what she was seeing. "You saved my father's life, Sarah," Jacob continued, his voice softer now. "This is the least I can do to show my gratitude." Tears welled up in her eyes. The emotion she had held back all day came rushing forward in an unstoppable wave. Overwhelmed, she sank onto the nearest chair, clutching the check with both hands as tears streamed down her face. It wasn't just about the money. It was about being recognized, about feeling seen, about someone acknowledging the sacrifices she had made without hesitation. For the first time in a long time, Sarah felt that maybe, just maybe, she hadn't lost everything. Perhaps she had gained something far greater than she ever imagined. But Jacob's generosity didn't stop there. The next evening, Sarah found herself seated across from him in one of the city's most exclusive restaurants, an atmosphere of elegance and refinement surrounding them. The soft glow of chandeliers cast shimmering reflections on the polished marble floors, and the murmur of hushed conversations filled the air. Sarah, still overwhelmed by the whirlwind of events, struggled to comprehend how she had gone from being unemployed to dining with one of the most powerful men in the medical industry. As the waiter poured wine into her glass, Jacob leaned forward, his expression serious yet sincere. "Sarah, I own a network of private hospitals," he began, his deep voice steady. "For years, I've searched tirelessly for someone with genuine compassion and integrity, someone who doesn't just follow the rules, but follows their heart when it matters most. You proved yourself without even knowing who we were. Sarah swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around the stem of her glass. She had spent her entire career fighting against bureaucracy, navigating endless policies that often stood in the way of patient care. She had never expected recognition, let alone from someone as influential as Jacob Matthews. He continued, his tone unwavering. I want you to run a new medical center, one built on your vision, your principles, with no interference from red tape or corporate interests. A place where doctors and nurses can focus on saving lives without limitations. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't just a job offer. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. Her mind raced with possibilities. Could she really build something revolutionary? A hospital where patients weren't turned away because of insurance? A place where medical staff weren't suffocated by regulations, but empowered to do their jobs? The very idea sent a shiver down her spine. She looked up, meeting Jacob's gaze. "Why me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jacob's lips curled into a knowing smile. "Because you acted when no one else would. That's the kind of leader I need." Sarah exhaled, her heart pounding. This was bigger than she had ever imagined, a responsibility unlike any she had known. But deep inside, she already knew her answer. After everything she had been through, after all the battles she had fought, this was what she was meant to do. After hours of deep reflection, Sarah found herself standing by her apartment window, gazing at the city lights shimmering in the distance. Her mind swirled with emotions, fear, excitement, and an undeniable sense of purpose. She had spent years dedicating herself to medicine, fighting to help those in need despite the constraints of bureaucracy and the harsh realities of the American healthcare system. Insurance limitations, hospital policies, and financial hurdles often meant that patients were denied the care they desperately needed. Sarah had seen firsthand how these barriers affected people, and it had only fueled her determination to make a difference, no matter the cost. Now, here she was, presented with an opportunity not just to practice medicine, but to redefine how healthcare was delivered. The weight of the decision pressed down on her, but deep inside, she knew there was only one answer. With renewed determination, she picked up her phone and dialed Jacob's number. The line barely rang before his familiar voice answered, calm and composed as always. "Sarah," he greeted, as if he had been expecting her call. She inhaled deeply, steadying herself before speaking. "I'm in," she said firmly, her voice filled with certainty. There was a pause on the other end, then a quiet chuckle. "I knew you would be. Welcome to something bigger than either of us." In the weeks that followed, Sarah threw herself into the monumental task of building a healthcare facility like no other. She handpicked a team of skilled, compassionate professionals who shared her vision. Architects and designers worked tirelessly to bring the vision to life, an advanced medical center where the priority wasn't profit, but patient care. Every hallway, every treatment room, every policy was shaped with one goal in mind: to ensure no one would ever be denied care because of paperwork or financial limitations. As the grand opening of Sarah's Compassionate Care Center approached, the reality of what she had accomplished finally settled in. She wasn't just stepping into a new role, she was stepping into a new era of medicine, one she had helped create. And for the first time in a long time, she felt not just hopeful, but truly fulfilled. Months later, Sarah stood in front of the gleaming glass doors of the newly opened Sarah's Compassionate Care Center, Healing Without Barriers, a revolutionary facility designed to break the cycle of financial and bureaucratic obstacles that often prevent people from receiving proper medical care in the U.S. Unlike traditional hospitals bound by insurance policies and administrative red tape, this center would ensure that no patient was turned away due to financial hardship. Here, healthcare was about people, not profits, a model that could challenge and redefine the way the system worked. The morning sun reflected off the modern facility, its walls standing tall as a beacon of hope for those in need. The hospital grounds were alive with energy, nurses in crisp uniforms moving with purpose, patients being wheeled in without the fear of bureaucracy stopping them, and a team of doctors who had embraced the center's mission of providing care without limits. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, taking in the fresh scent of possibility that filled the air. Every step she had taken, every sleepless night spent designing this center, had led her here. The pain of losing her job had transformed into the greatest opportunity of her life. Beside her, Jacob Matthews stood, his hands in his pockets, surveying the scene with a satisfied smile. "I knew you were the right choice, Sarah," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "But even I couldn't have imagined how far you would take this." Sarah turned to him, her eyes glistening. "It was never just about me, Jacob. It was about all the people who needed this place. The ones who were turned away, ignored, or forced to wait. Here, they'll finally get the care they deserve." As she spoke, a young boy emerged from the entrance, his small frame still fragile, but his eyes bright with gratitude. Sarah recognized him immediately. His name was Ethan, a 6-year-old who had once been denied treatment at a different hospital because his parents couldn't afford the medical expenses. She had met him months ago when his mother tearfully begged for help, and now, seeing him healthy and smiling, filled her heart with an overwhelming sense of purpose. He clutched his mother's hand, glancing back toward the hospital as if it had given him a second chance. "Thank you, Miss Sarah," he said softly before running off to join his family, his laughter echoing in the morning air. He clutched his mother's hand, glancing back toward the hospital as if it had saved him. "Thank you, Miss Sarah," he said softly before running off to join his family. Sarah swallowed past the lump in her throat. It was moments like these that proved she had made the right decision. The world had tried to push her out, but she had pushed back, carving her own path. And now, standing in front of something she had built from the ground up, she knew this was exactly where she was meant to be. Sometimes, what seems like the worst day of your life can become the beginning of something extraordinary. Lesson from this story. Sarah's journey teaches us a powerful truth. Sometimes, losing everything is the first step to gaining something far greater. She faced a difficult choice: follow the rules or follow her heart. And in the end, her courage and compassion led her to a destiny beyond anything she could have imagined. Key takeaways. Doing the right thing is always worth it. Even when the odds are against you, standing up for what is right can lead to opportunities you never expected. Compassion should never be limited by rules. Policies and systems may create barriers, but true kindness and humanity always find a way through. One person can make a difference. Sarah didn't just save one life. She changed the future of healthcare for many others. A single act of courage can inspire change on a much larger scale. When one door closes, another, often better, one opens. Losing her job felt like an ending, but it was actually the beginning of something incredible. The meaningful message behind this story. This isn't just a story about a brave nurse. It's a reminder that we all have the power to change lives. In a world where too many people turn away from others' suffering, be the person who steps forward. If you've ever felt trapped by the limitations of a system, remember that real change starts with individuals like Sarah, those who are willing to act, even when it's difficult. What would you have done in Sarah's shoes? Do you think Jacob's test was fair? Share your thoughts in the comments below and rate this story from 1 to 10. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Story Precious for more incredible, heartwarming stories. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Together, let's spread kindness, inspire change, and remind the world that compassion always wins.